The snow had begun to fall heavier that night in the small Ohio town, piling onto the empty streets until the world outside the windows of WKRX 103.6 FM looked like a dead white blanket. Inside the studio, the fluorescent lights hummed with a tired buzz. Mark Collins leaned back in his worn leather chair, rubbed his eyes, and took a slow sip of his lukewarm coffee. It was 2 a.m., and his show, Midnight Callers, was dragging along as it usually did at this hour. Some nights he got lively truckers, insomniacs, or drunks, desperate to hear their own voice on the radio. Other nights, it was silence and static. Tonight felt like one of those nights. The snowstorm was rattling the windows, making the already old building shudder. He adjusted his headphones, leaned toward the microphone, and spoke in his smooth, late-night voice, the one his listeners knew so well. You're listening to WKRX, the voice of the night. This is Mark Collins, keeping you company while the world sleeps. Phone lines are open. Tell me what's on your mind. The phone lines blinked once, then sat dead. He sighed. He scrolled through his playlist, queued up a song, but just as he was about to let it play, one of the phone lines lit up. A flicker of red against the dark console. Mar pressed the button, his tone warm and practiced. Good evening, caller. You're on the air with Midnight Callers. What's your name? For a moment, there was nothing but static. A low hiss. Then a voice broke through. It was heavy, distorted, like the speaker's throat was filled with gravel. Mark. The hair rose on the back of his neck. The way his name stretched out, like the caller had been waiting for him, he tried to recover with a chuckle. Well, sounds like I've got a mysterious one tonight. What's on your mind? The voice came again, deeper this time. Don't look behind you. Mark froze. The words slid into his ears like ice water. He swiveled his chair, staring at the soundproof glass that separated him from the empty producer's booth. Nothing, just the reflection of his own pale face. He forced another laugh, though it cracked halfway out. Spooky advice for the night. Huh, you're giving me goosebumps here. Static flared, and then the line went dead. He sat back, heartbeat quickening, telling himself it was a prank. Late night shows attracted plenty of weirdos. He shook it off and returned to his playlist. 10 minutes passed, and just as he was about to settle, another line blinked. He took a breath and answered, WKRX. You're live. This time, it was a woman. Her voice trembled, urgent. Please, please help me. He's in the house. He's inside right now. Mark leaned closer to the mic, trying to keep his professional compo shua. Ma'am, if someone's in your house, you need to call the police. Hang up and dial 911. No, he's right here. Her words broke into a scream. In the background came a sound Mark would never forget. The tearing of fabric, the wet slice of flesh splitting, a choking gurgle. She shrieked as if something sharp ripped through her throat. A violent thud. Then silence. Mark shot out of his chair, ripping off his headphones. His hands shook as he stared at the phone console. The line was still open, nothing but a faint, wet sound, like someone chewing too close to the receiver. He hit disconnect, chest hammering. It had to be a sick prank. Some asshole with a... That was the only explanation Yet as he looked back toward the glass window of the booth, he froze. There, on the inside of the glass, smeared across the surface, as though pressed from within, was a fresh streak of blood. His legs weakened. He stumbled back, whispering to himself, "No, that's impossible." He stared, willing it to vanish, but the dark smear only glistened more in the harsh studio light. The phone rang again, all 5 lines lit at once, blinking wildly like a pulse. Against every instinct, Mark answered another. The sound that came through was worse than the last. A man screaming, begging. "He's tearing me apart. Oh God, he's ripping out my ribs." Bones cracked audibly, followed by a gush. The unmistakable splash of blood hitting the floor. Something squelched like a boot grinding into meat. Mark's stomach lurched. He could almost smell iron in the air, the metallic stench of blood filling the tiny booth. He gagged, clutching his chest, but the sound kept pouring in someone's organs, spilling onto the ground. Their screams strangled as if their lungs had been punctured. He slammed the line shut. All 5 lit again instantly. The room grew colder, his breath visible in the air. His console flickered, the lights dimming, shadows crawling at the edges of the studio. The emergency exit door rattled, but when he rushed over, the handle wouldn't budge. It was jammed, sealed, shut as if welded. The phones kept ringing. He didn't want to answer, but one clicked on by itself, speaker blaring without his touch. The voice returned, the distorted, gravel-deep one from before. "Every scream you broadcast becomes real." Mark's eyes widened. "What the hell do you want from me?" A laugh, guttural and low. "You let them in, Mark. You gave them a voice. Now you'll hear them all." The studio speakers erupted at once, an orchestra of agony. Screams from men, women, children, layered over one another, until the walls themselves vibrated. Behind those screams came the sounds of mutilation, scalps being torn from skulls, spines snapping, intestines slapping onto tile. The speakers dripped a dark fluid. He blinked, and it wasn't fluid anymore. It was blood, pouring out, running across the soundboard in hot rivulets. Mark stumbled back, slipping, and when he steadied himself, he saw them. In the corners of the studio, shadowy shapes began to emerge. Figures of men and women, their faces missing, skin hanging in strips. They twitched with jerks like marionettes. One opened a faceless mouth, and from it came the voice of a caller he'd just heard die. He spun to the mirror again and saw something worse. His own reflection wasn't him anymore. The mirrored Mark's face was shredded, jaw dangling, eyes gouged out, but still moving, still mimicking him. No. He pressed his hand to the glass, but the reflection's hand was nothing but bone and torn tendon. The caller's voice grew louder, filling his head, almost vibrating in his skull. "It's your turn, Mark." He staggered to the mic, trembling, and forced his mouth to move. "If you're listening to this, turn it off. Don't let him in." Static roared, and the laughter came again, a chorus this time, surrounding him. His chest seized with terror. The shadows closed in, their shredded hands reaching. Cold fingers dug into his arms, pulling, nails carving deep furrows. He screamed, microphone capturing every note of his pain, broadcasting it to whoever was awake in Ohio at 2:30 in the morning. The tearing began at his shoulder, tendons snapping as though cut by invisible blades. He shrieked, begged, bones cracking, ribs breaking open, his lungs filled with blood, bubbling as he gasped. His organs were tugged upward, one by one, slopping weightly onto the console. Listeners across the state sat frozen, hearing every gory detail transmitted over the airwaves, the wet squelch of his heart torn free, the ripping pop of his eyes gouged from his screams drowning into choking gargles. The laughter became deafening. His final thought before the darkness was that the broadcast would never stop, and then silence. The next morning, police were called to WKRX after multiple disturbed listeners phoned in, claiming they had heard a man being butchered alive on the station. Officers arrived to find the studio empty. The doors were locked from the inside. The equipment was drenched in blood, every dial and button clogged with drying crimson. Teeth and fragments of bone littered the floor, but no body on the console. The phone line still blinked red. An officer, against his better judgment, pressed the receiver to his ear. The same graveltic voice whispered through the static, "The broadcast never ends." The line clicked dead, leaving only silence.
Please like and subscribe channel Fear Frequency for more horror stories. Thank you.